We have NSA's two top whistleblowers, Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe, and this is following the Academy Award, the Oscar presentation to Citizen4, the documentary on Edward Snowden, another NSA whistleblower. We've had Russ Tice on the show before, and we're going to have Tom Drake on within the next month. We're going to be talking about the NSA's heist of your cell phone, basically. Let's get right to the show. Kirk, are you with us on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
You know, I am so pleased that you're with us, sir. I don't know where to begin. We got a tweet from Glenn Greenwald earlier, and maybe that's the place to start here. We talked to him about this show. He's talking to all his friends on Reddit, and here's what he has to say. Excuse me. Laura Poitras and Glenn Greenwald are here together at Los Angeles. Excuse me, I'm so excited. Joined by Edward Snowden from Moscow. A little bit out of context, Laura is the filmmaker and journalist and the director of Citizen4, which last night won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. The film debuts on HBO tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll have some links here at KMEC Radio on the documentary and Citizen4. Glenn Greenwald is a journalist who co-founded The Intercept. I'll have a link on that as well with Laura Poitras and fellow journalist Jeremy Shahill. Laura, Glenn, and Ed with Edward Snowden in Moscow are all on the board of directors at Freedom of the Press Foundation. We'll do our best to answer as many of your questions about the Academy Award as possible, and we appreciate your understanding as we may not get to everyone as fast as we'd like to. I'll have those links as well from Reddit. Kirk, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I'm just humbled. I'm humbled to have you on the show. I'm humbled to have Bill on the show. I'm humbled that Citizen4 won the Academy Award last night. Why don't you just give us a little background about the documentary, who Edward Snowden is, who are the NSA whistleblowers, why is this so important, and then we'll talk about the breaking news over the weekend that the NSA has basically heisted the encryption codes for cell phones.
Yeah, perfect context. Let's begin with the movie. Even before Laura Poitras met Edward Snowden, she had been filming with Bill Binney and me and Tom Drake for maybe a year and a half, gathering lots of footage, catching us in very innocent moments in the sense of not contrived, staged video, but kind of following us around with her video expert, Kirsten Johnson. And so we knew Laura. And we had been telling our story, and her intent was to somehow package that story and tell the American people. Well, of course, here comes from the sky a golden nugget in the person of Ed Snowden, who had the personal dedication to the United States Constitution and the wit to recognize what the United States government was doing. And having done his homework, having seen Kirk Wiebe, Bill Binney, Tom Drake attempt to blow the whistle on wrongdoing, everything from outlandish amounts of monies being wasted to spying on Americans, going through official channels but failing utterly. We were not able to put a dent in the armor of the United States government. They refused to acknowledge, they refused to change. Ed Snowden knew that. And so he has said so much that watching what happened to us convinced him, along with his own courage and dedication to the principles of the Constitution, that he had to take other measures by downloading materials in sufficient quantities. And I say it that way on purpose. Snowden has taken some hits recently in various press about having obtained some things that were even acknowledged by him to be classified and should not be released to the public. That's a consequence of the age we live in. You got to remember, no one gave Ed Snowden permission, and no one gave Ed Snowden the time on the job to personally sift through anywhere from 70 to 150,000 documents when he had official duties to perform. So, of course, when you download a lot of information from a file, from a server, you don't have the time. It's like your email queue. You don't have time to go through it, let alone go through all the documents he was facing. He just needed to obtain a sample large enough to contain evidence of wrongdoing that he could release. So was it the best form in terms of handing those documents to the press and saying, you be the adjudicator? Maybe not the best from the government's purview, but from the people's purview, not bad. And I think most of the members of the press that he handed it to used good judgment in not releasing things that were truly harmful to our troops, our Defense Department, etc. So he takes this magnificent step forward, takes these documents out, leaves the country, has to find a safe place to meet up with someone, and it's obvious he hadn't planned it a long time in advance about what he was going to do. Thank God Glenn Greenwald, thank God Laura Poitras were there to help him make that transition from a fleer to someone who could talk, and I say eloquently, about his own actions. I'm 70 years old, John, and I have never seen a young man of his age handle himself with good demeanor, show wisdom beyond his age, a full grasp of the issues, what the Constitution is all about, and why that preempts any other law of the land, and therefore justifies his actions. And frankly, he had no other choice. It's a shame that our own government does not have paths to honest discussion of issues so that these kinds of things don't happen in the first place.
What are your
Binney and I tried to, along with our friends Tom Drake, Ed Loomis, our friend from Congress, Diane Rourke, who now is retired up in Oregon, we tried to convince people that there was a good way to go, that was going to require some discussion with the judiciary, but that we felt we could offer enough protection that we would never jeopardize the privacy of the American people, or trade privacy for security, or trade security for privacy. The solution we had, the concepts that we had, the prototype that we had, actually up and running, demonstrated these principles. And yet General Hayden, then director of NSA, ignored them totally. Although I must tell you, his deputy director came down and saw it and said, my God, you've made great breakthroughs. Why are you being so modest? We never heard from him again. Hayden told him to shut up, that they were going to go another way. And that other way is what we have today. And you can see the embarrassment it's caused to our nation in the eyes of foreigners, so-called allies. You can see the harm to our tech industry that it's brought. And you don't blame Snowden for this. All secrets eventually get out. If you're doing something wrong, you probably shouldn't be doing it because it has tremendous consequences. And we're seeing them today, and it's a shame. It's a sad moment for these United States.
You bet. But the truth is out. The truth is out in the documentary. The truth is out in shows like this. I'd like to introduce both of our guests here. We had been on the phone with Kirk Wiebe. Wiebe is the National Security Agency's whistleblower who worked for the agency for 36 years. Wiebe's colleague Bill Binney developed what's called the thin thread information processing system that arguably could have detected and prevented the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Let me say that again. Binney and Wiebe, the two guests that we're gonna have on the line today, developed what's called a thin thread information processing system that arguably could have detected and prevented the 9/11 terrorist attacks. We've done shows on how the FBI and the CIA did not share intelligence that could have prevented terrorist attacks at 9/11. This, you can add that to the scandal. NSA officials, though, when looking at Thin Thread, ignored the program in favor of something called Trailblazer, a program that ended in total failure with the cost of tens of billions of dollars. Wiebe and Binney blew the whistle internally on Trailblazer and the waste of tens of billions to no avail. That's who the gentleman we were last speaking with, Kirk Wiebe, is. And Bill Binney, a little bit better known than Wiebe, is the former high-level National Security Agency intelligence official who, after his 2001 retirement, after 30 years, blew the whistle on the NSA surveillance programs. His outspoken criticism of the NSA during the George W. Bush administration made him the subject of an FBI investigation that included a raid on his home in 2007. Even before Edward Snowden's NSA whistleblowing, Binney publicly revealed that the NSA had access to telecommunication companies' domestic and international billing records, and that since 9/11, the agency has intercepted some 20 trillion communications.
For those of you who have seen Citizen4, which is a must-see by anyone, you'll notice Bill Binney was the first person doing the whole metadata collection. He said, hey, we can figure out a way to put together this information to assess threats and detect them and stop them by just looking at this metadata. And he was, of course, the only person doing this at the time. And right after 9/11, they decided to use his back program to collect not only that for terrorist threats, but for everybody. And that's when he got a little disenchanted with the NSA.
All right. So, Bill, welcome to our show. I was just reading your bio. The point I was making at the end of your bio is that you, to answer those who would say, oh, whistleblowers aren't patriotic, I'm quoting Edward Snowden here, I have tremendous respect for Binney, who not only doing the patriotic thing and blowing the whistle on NSA whistleblowing, did everything he could according to the rules. So you went through channels, you were just either completely ignored or vilified. You did everything according to the rules. What protections do the whistleblower laws actually provide?
Well, if you look at it with the Sterling case and everything else, actually they produce no protection whatsoever. I mean, they say they do, but they really don't. The fact of the matter is that people who try to internally deal with the whistleblowing, and because after all, what they're doing is raising issues that are important to resolve one way or the other. I mean, that's the whole idea is they're raising issues that are problems for whatever organization they're in, and what's happening is they're being attacked when they do this, instead of them simply taking advantage of them raising an issue and dealing with it and solving it, and then making their product and their position and organization better. They're attacking them. And so what that means is that the problems continue to fester and continue to exist, and nothing is solved. And so they're not really improving the situation in their department of the government or whatever agency or government or commercial company they're in. Why they're not fixing and getting better. They're just staying worse and covering up what looks to be a wart. In their sense, they think you can't show me up for doing something bad. I guess I can't admit. It's like an alcoholic, you know. When you have alcoholics that can't recognize that they're alcoholics, they can never solve their problem, and that's what's going on. Right.
You know, we've had on the show Russ Tice, who's an NSA whistleblower, who said on the air, "I can't get a job. I'm broke. I can't get a job." And I'm in touch. I graduated from the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Study. I think he'd be a great lecturer there. I'm shopping around, seeing who might like to hire him on. We've had Peter Van Buren, the whistleblower from the State Department, 28-year veteran in the State Department, blowing the whistle on billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and corruption in the reconstruction efforts and governance efforts in Iraq, which we know now to be an abysmal failure with ISIS's emergence. We've had Matthew Ho, who's paid price for being a whistleblower. We've had any number of people on the show who've been whistleblowers who all paid a high price. What price did you pay? So if the Whistleblower Act does not provide that many protections, The flip side of that is you actually pay a price. What price did Bill Binney pay?
Well, there were several things. One, they first of all they took away the clearance, and that meant that I couldn't get a job in the community. And then when we tried to move out of the community, they attacked us by trying to call it a conspiracy. When we tried to group together, because we were denied the ability to get jobs inside the government, so we tried to do it in an unclassified environment. And as a part of that, they attempted to frame us and called it our meeting a conspiracy to, I don't know, to they never really specifically said, but they claimed that it was a conspiracy to leak classified information. They didn't say to whom or what. It was just nothing was defined. It was all nebulous, and so they could make a general charge in any way they wanted. That was the whole point of it, just to keep us off balance and keep us from being able to do anything. So that's the way they attacked us there. So we lost all ability to do any business too, just like Russ did.
Right.
So that was another problem. Otherwise, it cost us some money to hire a lawyer for sure, and also they attempted to frame us, and they were going to indict us at one point. But at that point, I had been assembling evidence of malicious prosecution on the part of the Department of Justice of the United States. They were falsifying evidence and fabricating things and trying to charge us with those. Someone over at the Department of Justice felt really bad about what they were doing to us, so they sent us through I don't know how we got it or who it was, but we got it through channels. We got a copy of their draft indictment of us, and it was clear what all the lies were that they were trying to fabricate in there. So we had all that evidence, too, and we still do, by the way.
Yeah.
So.
This is the price you had to pay. And where did you go from there? How did you connect with other whistleblowers? How did you, assemble the case and make it as credible as you could that there was this whole mega data program, the PRISM that we now know to be a program we know as PRISM? How did you find other whistleblowers? How did you make your case before the American public, and perhaps even inspired the whistleblower we now know to be Edward Snowden? So how did that happen?
Well, you see, after they had fabricated evidence and attempted to put us on trial and indict us, and they failed at that, they also fabricated evidence against Tom Drake, and they were caught doing that too.
Right.
That's why their case fell apart.
Right.
They claimed they didn't want to expose classified facts in a courtroom, but the fact of the matter is they got caught fabricating evidence. And that was the reason why they dropped that case like a hot potato. So, and the same thing was true with us. Once they found out that we had all this knowledge about malicious prosecution, they dropped it right away, and so that went away. But that was the turning point. At that point, I said, my government is so corrupt, so in the tank in terms of trying to cover up their crimes and subversion of our Constitution, that it's just, I have to go public with this now and get out in the open and shine the light on all this stuff that they're doing.
Yeah.
So that was the reason I started. And then I ran across the Government Accountability Project with Jesselyn Raddick.
Right.
And we got to know her, and then we networked from there, and got to know Jane Mayer, and she did an article in her paper and all. And then Jim Bamford got involved with him. And it just spread from there into
a critical mass.
And Laura Poitras picked it up, and
Right.
she got us involved with the Democracy Now! And various other places in New York and other places, and so then it just spread from there.
Good. So today we're talking about the NSA whistleblowers breaking the newest spy story, the spying on billions of dollars, billions of cell phones. The Intercept.
SIM cards are already hacked before they get to your cell phone.
I have in the studio with me, that was Sid Cooperrider, who's our technology guy here at the station.
Someone was asking me how they can send a secure, message. Really, what it comes down to, if you want to send a secure message to someone, you can use a secure email. You can use protonmail.ch from Switzerland, but only from a desktop. Because really, if you have a phone, even beyond the SIM cards, every keystroke on a phone is most likely recorded. Every keystroke. Think about that. not just messages. Every keystroke as it's being pressed is being recorded. So if you want to send a secure message, write it on a piece of paper and hand it to the person. Okay, so back to SIM cards.
So here's what the breaking story is. Again, The Intercept is the publication that brought forward the Academy Award-winning Citizen-4. They broke over the weekend that according to top-secret documents that they now have in possession, that the National Security Agency's whistleblower Edward Snowden has provided to them, that a hack was perpetuated by a joint unit consisting of operatives from both the NSA and its British counterpart, something called Government Communication Headquarters, or GCHQ. The breach was detailed in a secret 2010 GCHQ document that gave the security surveillance agencies the potential to secretly monitor a large portion, if not most, of the world's cellular communications, including voice, data, text, video, you name it. The company targeted by the intelligence agencies is called Gemalto, and is a multinational firm incorporated in the Netherlands that markets the chips and is used in mobile phones for the next generation credit cards. Among its clients are AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, Sprint, and some 450 wireless network providers around the world. This Gemalto operates in 85 countries and has more than 40 manufacturing facilities. One of its 3 global headquarters is in Austin, Texas, and it has a large factory in Pennsylvania. So with these stolen encryption keys, intelligence agencies can now monitor mobile communications without seeking or receiving approval from telecom companies and foreign governments. Possessing the keys also sidesteps the requirement to get a warrant or a wiretap, while leaving no trace of wireless providers' networks that the communications were intercepted. There's something called bulk key theft. Bulk key theft additionally enables the intelligence agencies to unlock any previously encrypted communications that they had already intercepted, but yet do not have the ability to decipher. What do you know about that? That again, that the stolen encryption keys allow intelligence agencies like the NSA to go back in time to unlock any previously encrypted communications.
Well, certain keys that you have will protect, communications going across the wire at a certain time. That being said, if somebody has access to one of the endpoints where the keys have to be, and they have to use those to decipher them, then getting to that communication is easy. So going back in time, yes, if you have a bunch of keys and you have a bunch of saved information, as we know the NSA saves, has a full take. But going back in time with some of those keys allows you to easily get the information that was hidden before.
All right, I think Kirk is back on the line with us, and we're still trying to get Bill back into the stream here. Kirk?
Yep.
All right, so we're talking about the newest revelation by Snowden via Intercept on America's NSA and Great Britain's Government Communication Headquarters, or GCHQ, and the memo that was just released, the 2010 memo, detailing the surveillance agency's potential to monitor a large portion, if not most, of the world's cell phone communications. To what extent can they do this? What's that memo all about? How serious is this problem?
It's global. It's pervasive. It's complete. What we saw in the, I believe the name of the company is Gemalto in the Netherlands. If you notice, this is very much a GCHQ-centric document that was leaked. It acknowledges NSA involvement, but it's really GCHQ ownership of responsibility for the various countries listed in that disclosure, France, Brazil, and others. We can we are left to assume that the rest of the world belongs to NSA. Or it could be that GCHQ and NSA have particular regions of the world that they share responsibility for, or divide up the task is what I'm trying to say. So that GCHQ has what we see in those slides. The NSA, we could say, probably has United States, maybe parts of Southeast Asia, maybe China, maybe North Korea, things like that. Or maybe it's Australia as a member of the Five Eyes partnership. The Five Eyes being the United States, Britain through GCHQ, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. And that is typically how they would operate. They would divide up the task between the five. And there'd be some rough equivalence to in terms of geography covered by each of those partners. So that Southeast Asia would be, and maybe even China for that matter, would be the responsibility of Australia. But the bottom line is it's pervasive, it's everywhere, and you can bet it's complete.
All right, so I'm wondering how this all happened. I'm not unacquainted with how spooks work. We're not going to talk about that over the air. But here you have the UK's GCHQ probably taking ownership of this project with some help from the NSA. You have the target, the SIM card manufacturer, this firm in the Netherlands, Gemalto. And I'm thinking, how would I do this? And I'm thinking that the way I would start would be to mine the private communications of unsuspecting engineers at Gemalto and other company employees in multiple countries to figure out how to hack into their system, how to get those encryption codes. Is that how you would do it?
That is one way to do it. There are some others that come to mind. One would be infecting hardware or software obtained by Gemalto from some third-party vendor or source. We know there is an effort wherein these agencies insert spyware, either hardware or software or both, into devices from the commercial marketplace. And, of course, these companies are no different. They have to buy the stuff. They have to put it online. They put it on a network. They connect it to databases and developers on their own local area network, LAN, if you will. And they set up protections so that people can't come in from the outside. Right. But, of course, these software or hardware insertions are inside. So, in a way, it's a planted inside job. That's another way to do it. There is yet one more that I'm a little more skeptical about, but we know the effort has existed for a long, long time, and that's one in which a team of very capable hackers work and work and work until they can get by the company's firewalls and safeguards and actually hack in and get the information that way.
Yeah. Do you want to hear the irony of this company of the Netherlands, Gemalto? First of all, it's huge. We've talked about that. They make these SIM cards for AT&T, Mobile, Verizon, Sprint, and 450 other wireless network providers. Do you know what their corporate motto is?
No, I have not seen it.
Security to be free.
Yeah, isn't that ironic?
So I'm wondering if they're so big, where's their in-house security? If GCHQ and the NSA in a joint project, by whatever three means that we've outlined so far on the show, can steal encryption keys, where are their in-house security experts?
Yeah, it's true. There are so many webs that have been woven between governments and companies that you can never quite be sure who NSA or GCHQ has a deal with. And most of their own employees don't even know about it. It's kept quiet up at the highest levels. And so that's one way this thing is able to happen, so that they don't have to brute force, through some cyber attack or hacking method. They have to go in that way. It's cooperative at some level. But they all want to look good, and they all want to look like they're protecting our privacy. Mm-hmm. It's just a dirty little secret that is no longer a secret, and this is what we're left with. Now we got to figure out how we're going to deal with it.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. I'm not going to let Gemalto off the hook quite yet. We've been in touch with them as well preparing for this show. They say that they were totally oblivious to the penetration of the systems and on the spying on their employees. And I'm quoting Paul Beverly, Gemalto Executive Vice President, and he says, and I quote, "I'm disturbed, quite concerned that this has happened." He goes on to say, "The most important thing for me is to understand exactly how this was done so we can take every measure to ensure that it doesn't happen again and to make sure that there's no impact on the telecom operations that we have served in a very trusted manner for many years. What I want to understand is what sort of ramification this has or could have on any of our customers." And he concluded by saying, "The most important thing for us now is to understand the degree of the breach." Do you believe this guy, Paul Beverly?
I would give him the benefit of the doubt. But if he is honest about what he says, if he's true to his word, he will sue, or actually he will have experts in to see if they can find signs, evidence of how it happened.
Yeah.
And that may be tough. Done well, it's almost impossible to find traces. Or if you do find traces in the way of server logs and that kind of thing, that someone has visited your network,
right,
but you don't know whom, that's pretty much what you'll be left with, is somebody visited, but we don't know who it was.
Yeah.
And you may even have some sense of how long they dwelled within your network,
right,
before leaving. But it's not going to be easy. But what I am saying is he should share that story with us, blow by blow,
yep,
as it goes on here over the next few weeks and months.
Yep, I think they have a moral obligation to do that. It's kind of like leaving the door to the hen house open. You have to take some responsibility for your own in-house security. And I'm not sure that that either our intelligence agencies or the UK's didn't have somebody working from the inside. I'm not convinced that isn't the case either.
That's a possibility for sure.
I'm a big believer in boots on the ground. I think a big believer in what spooks called human intelligence. There's no substitute. And that's no disrespect to you, Bill, Tom, or Edward Snowden, or the other brainiacs in the electronic world. I think there's no substitute for human intelligence as well.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a vital part, a vital component of the all-source intelligence operation. Yeah. Got to have it.
So this is what the principal technologist for the American Civil Liberties Union had to say. They said, once you have these keys, the encryption keys we were talking about, decrypting traffic is trivial. The key theft will send a shockwave through the security community in ways we can't even conceive of. What do you think he has in mind there?
Well, what it means is, we've heard a lot about metadata. In the phone world, metadata is essentially the phone number of a phone that belongs to an individual. The other metadata includes the name of the individual, their address, maybe a bank account or a Social Security number, because everyone's asking for our Social Security number these days, if you notice. That's all metadata. But when you have the SIM card decrypt, you can decrypt every conversation at will. Not that anyone can possibly do that for the global communications, but for the ones they target and the ones they want to, for whatever reason they want to, they can do it, and they can do it in, let's call it near real time.
Mm-hmm. All right. Going back to how you think this project may have been conducted by the NSA and its British counterpart, you talked about planting malware on several computers, giving the NSA and Great Britain's GCHQ secret access. That would give them the entire network, of course. But there's some thought that these spy agencies may have targeted unnamed cellular companies' core networks, giving access to their sales staff machines for customer information and network engineers' machines for network maps. That would give them the ability to manipulate the billing servers of cell phone companies, to suppress charges in an effort to conceal the spy agency's secret actions against an individual phones, and that perhaps more significantly, that the NSA and GCHQ may have also penetrated what's called authentication servers, allowing them to decrypt data and voice communications between a targeted individual's phone and or his or her cell phone provider's network. What do you think about some of those theories?
I would assume that to be the case.
All right.
I've assumed that for some time that's been the case. So if you remember on one of the Snowden slides, it quoted then Director Keith Alexander, in quotes, saying, "Collect it all." And they mean it, and they're doing it. I can't imagine there's much left. Certainly, the primary means of communications of the world are being collected. Phone being one of the oldest and longest standing and is still there, and they've gotten into all the networks.
Right. Bill, what do you know about this this team? I believe it to be a joint NSA GCHQ team called the Mobile Handset Exploration Team, MHET. Hey, listen, it can't be a federal operation if it doesn't have an acronym. Whose entire existence has never been before disclosed before this recently leaked memo. The memo says it was formed in April 2010, and its purpose was to target vulnerabilities in cell phones. So what do you know about, if anything, about this Mobile Handset Exploration Team?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any first-hand knowledge.
Okay.
But it's logical that you would just as technology is forever changing. You remember we used to talk about not calendar years but internet years to convey some sense that technology is evolving so rapidly that change is continual virtually, and they're always marketing better phones to us. So the phone components are changing, the capabilities of the phones, the sophistication of the services, the consolidation of services in one device. Most people call their smartphone a little computer because it really is. Wouldn't want to author a PowerPoint on it, but by golly, you can do it if you have to. So with that comes the need for intelligence agencies to keep up with those changes. And so you have to devote resources, some number of resources, to all of the phone manufacturers, what they're putting in them, what kind of capabilities. Does that offer still more exploitation capabilities, bringing those to the attention of the people who have to provide the processing power, the hardware, software to process those types of protocols for those streams of potential intelligence? So it's a continuous continuous job that requires focus of that nature.
I just want to give our audience an update on Bill Binney here. We can't conference call with him at this moment. We're going to try to get him after we finished talking with our guest Kirk Wiebe. Kirk, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
It's Wiebe.
Wiebe. Kirk Wiebe.
Yep.
A longtime veteran of the NSA who won the second highest award a civilian can receive at the NSA for meritorious service. And I want to thank you for your contributions to national security, Kirk. I didn't get an opportunity to do that before, so thank you on behalf of a grateful nation.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm sitting here again with my suspicious and cynical mind, thinking, why this new SIM card project? And I'm thinking that as much as the NSA and the CIA would love to hack into American users' cell phone devices, they have an equal interest in the cell phone communications of foreigners. And because foreign intelligence agencies won't allow the U.S. or the U.K. To access the communications, mobile communications from their citizens, particularly including their heads of state and other government officials, that's maybe why they embarked on this new program. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's part of it. Everyone's trying to protect their own citizens, and we're trying to defeat those protections. It's under the charter of the NSA to produce foreign intelligence, and you can't do that if you can't read foreign traffic, foreign communications. So it's the job of the NSA to do that. Now, you can argue ethically, should they be doing that to Angela Merkel of Germany? Should they be doing that to the Prime Minister of England, of which we don't have any evidence? But one can only wonder if that's also happening.
What do you think I'm sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
What do you think the repercussions would be? Because if I were the head of state of another country like Merkel, I'd be pretty seriously bent out of shape. If I were the Dutch Prime Minister, I'd be way bent out of shape. That the spy agencies of the UK and the United States were able to conduct this heist of a company in my country. What do you think the repercussions will be?
Yeah, I think they will be serious repercussions, although it amazes me how far authorities in Europe and elsewhere will bend over to accommodate U.S. desires. And I guess it's because of our position in the world, our influence financially, our influence culturally, and in other ways. We're just so joined at the hip that countries, nation states, are unwilling to put that relationship at risk. And ultimately, it does not help. Now, there are things that can happen, though, that are already hurting our country. As you know, once our corporations were divulged as being complicit with the U.S. government in providing data of customers, and those companies that are headquartered in the United States and they have presence in Europe, now we see Europe saying no more outsourcing to U.S. companies. We're going to outsource to German companies, that kind of thing. And so I've already seen figures of huge amounts of money being lost because of termination of contracts with U.S. tech companies.
So this is
probably the biggest. So
this is what we've contacted the Dutch, also in preparation for this show, and here's what a member of their parliament had to say. Gerald Schouw, Schouw, and I quote, "It's unbelievable, unbelievable." It's unbelievable, but what are you going to do about it? We don't have to have secret services from other countries doing like this in the Netherlands. He goes on to say that the Dutch government needs for the U.S. and the U.K. to provide a quote-unquote official explanation and to clarify whether that country's intelligence owned services were aware of the targeting of Gemalto, whose headquarters, as we mentioned, was in Amsterdam. You think he's going to get? You think he's going to get that explanation? That explanation?
You know, I don't think so. It's sad that they won't, because what I think needs to happen is there needs to be outrage voiced across all of our international set of relationships. I mean, it has to be broad and it has to be loud, because what I fear is we have the heads of governments agreeing to do some of these things. And I have a theory about why the collection is so pervasive. It's not just NSA. It's the international law enforcement structure.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with the term parallel construction.
Yes. Well, explain it to our audience.
All right. Parallel construction is an operation in which the government, usually through NSA, but not always necessarily. The FBI, for example, is doing some of its own data collection operations. So NSA is not just the only one in our own government doing data collection. And they do it because it's easier if they collect electronic evidence from private communications to then build a scenario ostensibly from using typical gumshoe investigative techniques. In other words, people doing old-fashioned police investigation work. They build a scenario whereby it's plausible that the information they found out from electronic private communications could have been discovered using old-fashioned, long-time accepted investigative techniques. But they hide it in court. In other words, they don't tell the judge. They don't tell your lawyer. So you have no clue, if you're hauled into court, where the information came from.
Right.
And the FBI lies about where it came from. So no one's the smarter.
Yep.
What that does is undermine your legal rights under the Constitution.
Who's on that? Jeez.
Yeah, who is on that? That's a good question. I see it mentioned. I see shows discussing it once in a while. I have seen no evidence that anyone in our government, and I mean anyone, is taking that on. But it explains why Comey, the director of the FBI, when he gets on and he says, we got to have access to those electronic communications, otherwise we won't be able to do our job. Well, King George III of England could have said the very same thing to the colonists in the United States before we had a United States, when he wanted to put British soldiers in every colonial home to keep tabs on what they were doing.
Yep.
It makes the job easier. Of course it makes the job easier.
Well,
how about I put a policeman in everybody's home?
Well, the NSA and the UK have. Let's focus on the law. Let's focus on the law a little bit, and what recourse the Dutch government may have into international law courts. The Dutch last November, I believe, passed an amendment to its constitution that explicitly protects the privacy rights of its citizens in digital communications, and it also protects the privacy rights of those people using devices made in the Netherlands. Let me repeat that. Last November, I believe the Dutch government passed an amendment to the Constitution that explicitly protects the privacy of digital communications of its citizens, and also the citizens who buy devices, mobile devices, cell phones, made in the Netherlands. And I quote, again, this member of the Dutch Parliament, we have along the books Hacking is not allowed. This guy Schouw, Schlau, under the Dutch law, the Interior Minister would have to explicitly sign off on such operations that the U.S. and the U.K. are proposing. I don't think they'll give foreign governments, intelligence services that permission. I don't believe that permission has been given for the kind of action that we are now seeing in this 2010 memo that Snowden just released. Do you think the Dutch will bring this to the Hague court?
Well, yeah, I do. In Europe, the reaction to mass surveillance has been taken more to heart even than here in the United States. And I attribute it to the fact that Europe has experienced totalitarian, the consequences of totalitarianism, whether it be in the form of Nazis, not from Nazi Germany, the secret police, invading everyone's business, just about everything.
Right, they have a history of that.
Stasi.
Right.
Yep, the Stasi of East Germany. They've experienced it and lived it, and so they don't like it. And they know what it means. People in the United States really don't have a clue.
We're babes in the woods.
They've never been victimized by this kind of thing in terms of forcing people.
We're innocent and ignorant.
Exactly. Absolutely. And so Binney, Tom Drake and Binney and Jess Radak, myself, have testified to the European Union, the Parliament, in particular the Civil Liberties Subcommittee, what they call the LIBE Committee of the EU Parliament, on this entire issue. So there's many actions underfoot in Europe, like those in the Netherlands, bills being passed for privacy. But here's where it all ends up. You can put all the laws on the books you want to. Doesn't mean it's going to stop anybody from doing anything if they really want to undermine your security and get into your cyber knickers, if you will.
Right.
So this battle is continuing. And even if you are caught doing it, or someone has some evidence you're doing it, they cannot bring into court, at least in the United States, because of our espionage laws and the fact that the data is classified, you can't submit it into court. Because the government claims it would be bad for security.
Here we are again.
Yeah, exactly.
You use the expression they're in our knickers. I'm going to suggest it's a lot worse than that, and so does Matthew. I'm going to suggest we're bending over and grabbing our ankles, and a guy by the name of Matthew Green, a cryptography specialist at my alma mater, Johns Hopkins, who heads up the Johns Hopkins Information Security Institute, had this to say. This massive theft, again referring to Snowden's 2010 memo that just broke over the weekend on the theft of the SIM card keys, is bad news for phone security. And he goes on to say, let me rephrase that. This is really, really bad news. Gaining access to database of keys is pretty much game over for cellular encryption, period.
Yeah.
Is it that bad?
Yeah, it is that bad. Now, does that mean we're powerless to do anything? No. We're going to have to find different ways of encrypting. I mean, let's face it. If I put my encryption algorithm on a little card, a SIM card, and I don't know that most people in your audience even knows what that looks like. Yeah. But it looks like a little memory chip that slides into a slot when you take your battery out or somewhere else in the back of your phone. And some phones you can't change it, so you don't slide anything in. It's just built in. But the point of it is, we may have to go to a different type of encryption where it isn't dependent on a SIM card. I was talking to Tom Drake and some of my friends about this, and because the current means of user encryption are so clumsy and hard and painful to use and so dependent on other people doing their fair share of encryption for it to work. What we need is a box, a little box that we can plug any device into, that once it's plugged in, it does it all for you. It doesn't ask you to do anything, doesn't make you do anything.
Right.
It updates from a independent source. It's that, and of course the government's going to turn around and try to monitor that source and find ways to break it. But the truth of the matter is, if encryption is strong, and I'll leave it at that because it's a very ugly thing to discuss encryption when you get into the math and the polynomials of it. Most people fall asleep. But if it's very, very strong and you change the keys often enough, that's the methodology we have to get to. It's easy to use, it's strong, and it changes often enough the government can't get a lead on it. That is the one thing the government, all governments, don't want any of us to do, because it will take horrendous amounts of, and when I say horrendous, I mean large, huge amounts of computer processing time to try to break those algorithms, and they'll spend most of their